Welcome back, friends. In today's episode, we're going to discuss the contemporary uses of the melodic minor scale, the melodic minor diatonic chord formula, the minor mode, the major mode, chord progressions, arpeggiation, diatonic chord progressions, the parent scale as source material for melody and improvisation, melodic tendencies, and using diatonic chord formulas for analysis and composing. Here we go. Today, the use of the melodic minor scale is limited to the ascending version only. So when people refer to the melodic minor scale in contemporary use, they are only speaking of the ascending version, which can be played in ascending or descending fashion. The traditional descending version of this scale is ignored since it has the exact same construction as the natural minor scale and contributes nothing new to our understanding of scales, modes, or harmony. Let's revisit this ascending version of the melodic minor scale. We can create modes from this scale which are referred to as mode 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 in Roman numerals. If we skip every other note in each mode, we create these chords. And from these chords, we can create a melodic minor diatonic chord formula. If we remove the seventh from each of these chords, we get these triads. And this diatonic chord formula for triads from the melodic minor scale. This scale is now primarily used by jazz players and is very useful, as we'll see when we discuss improvisation later. The melodic minor scale is rarely used in commercial music genres. Incidentally, you will occasionally hear the term minor mode. This simply means the piece is in a minor key, such as the Prelude No. 10 in E minor. Being in the major or the minor mode indicates that the harmony and melody are created from a parent major or minor scale, respectively. A chord progression, sometimes referred to as a harmonic progression, is just a series of chords in progression, one right after the other. The 5 chord followed by a 1 minor chord mentioned in the last episode is an example of a chord progression. Perhaps you've heard of a 1-4-5 progression? Here it is. It's simply the 1, 4, and 5 chords created from a parent major scale, in this case, the D major scale. Here's an example of a 1, 6 minor, 5, and 4 progression. The parent scale that created this chord progression is the G major scale. Another chord progression you might recognize is the 1, 6 minor, 2 minor, 5 progression. In this example, the parent scale is the E-flat major scale. This particular example demonstrates arpeggiation. Arpeggiation is a term which indicates the factors of a chord are to be performed independently and in succession, one right after the other. Chord factors are commonly played harmonically, but arpeggiation requires the chord factors to be played melodically. Interestingly, our brain interprets these chord factors as a chord even though none of the notes are played simultaneously. These arpeggiated chord factors can be presented in any order, such as inversions, or even in a random order. The central point is that the chord factors are to be performed independently in succession. Incidentally, the 1, 6 minor, 2 minor, and 5 progression is very common in jazz but has the sevenths added to each chord. This entire chord progression was created from the D-flat major scale, its parent scale. Here is a diatonic chord progression from the natural minor scale. All of these chords in this chord progression were created from the A natural minor scale. This particular progression can be found in Stairway to Heaven by Led Zeppelin. It's even in the same key. Because of the genre of music, however, these chords are probably power chords or dyads, which omit the third of each chord, in the same way that jazz genres typically employ sevenths. To hear an example of arpeggiated triads used in a rock song, listen to the piano part in the first 4 bars in the verse section of Carry On Wayward Son by Kansas. This is also in A minor, but the unarpeggiated chord progression is as follows. All these progressions I've presented are diatonic chord progressions, meaning the chords are entirely created from a parent scale. Since the chords from a diatonic chord progression are entirely created from a parent scale, you will often find that the entire melody is also created from the parent scale. Additionally, you can create a melody or freely improvise over the entire chord progression using only notes from the parent scale, since the chords themselves are from the same parent scale. To illustrate this, I've created a short 4-bar melody over the same chords from the first 4 bars of the verse to Carry On My Wayward Son. Let's give this a listen. Notice both the chords and the melody are created from the A natural minor scale. Looking at the melody, you might also notice the melodic note choices almost always reflect a chord factor on the downbeat of each new chord when it first appears. This demonstrates an awareness of how melody interacts with harmony. The exception is the last 2 beats of measures 2 and 4, where the A natural is held over in the melody from the F major triad to the G major triad. This is not an unusual choice, however, as the A natural simply functions to change the G major triad into a G major triad add 9. Also notice how the last 2 16th notes in bars 2 and 3 serve as filler to get from one chord factor to the next. Besides building harmony and melody, scales are very commonly used as the connective thread to get from one place to another. As far as improvisation is concerned, let's look at the chord progression from Stairway to Heaven, and I'll improvise a short solo over it using nothing but the A natural minor scale. Not all chord progressions are diatonic as in these examples, and as illustrated, there are certain ways melody notes should be handled. We'll cover that in more detail when we discuss melody and improvisation. We'll also cover other scales you can use on various progressions in different genres of music when we get to improvisation. For example, although the natural minor scale is used in rock songs for soloing as well as melody, a more commonly used scale is the blues scale. Nonetheless, you can basically use a parent scale as a resource for melodic and improvisatory ideas. By studying the chord progressions and melody of a songwriter or composer you admire, you can learn how the music is constructed and use it to write your own music. Roman numeral analysis referencing the diatonic chord formulas can help you analyze other people's music by identifying the parent scale the chords, progressions, and melody came from. Additionally, studying the chords, chord progressions, and melodic content of a specific genre of music will teach you which types of chords, progressions, and melodic content you should expect to see. This awareness will teach you what makes that genre special as you'll begin to understand the types of chords, progressions, and melody that makes that genre unique and sound the way it does. For example, power chords in traditional jazz would sound just as awful as seventh chords would in heavy metal. The diatonic chord formulas themselves can also be used as source material to create music. For example, here's a short excerpt of melody and harmony I created using only the C major scale as source material. If you'll notice, the chord progression of 1, 5, 2 minor, and 4 in the first 4 measures begins the same way in the last 4 bars, but is slightly changed in the last 4 bars to create variation and interest. Notice the melody was created from chord factors and nothing else. By simply experimenting with diatonic chord progressions, you can also inadvertently create a melody with the highest notes in the different voicings of those same chords. Additionally, by studying the various chord progressions from genres of music you like, you can mix them to create a new progression. Let's take a look at our prior examples of chord progressions. Here's our example of a 1, 6 minor, 5, and 4. And here's our 1, 6 minor, 2 minor, and 5 chord progression. Now here's our 1, 6 minor, 5, and 4 chord progression, but transposed to C. Next is the 1, 6 minor, 2 minor, and 5 chord progression, but transposed to C also for comparative purposes. If we mix and interchange the chords from these two progressions, we can come up with a third progression. Notice the first and second progressions both start out with a 1 and a 6 minor. Take a look at the third progression though. Like the first two progressions, the third progression starts out with the 1 and the 6 minor in the first 2 bars. However, the chord in bar 3 from the third progression comes from bar 3 in the second progression, while the chord in bar 4 of the third progression comes from bar 4 of the first progression. By mixing up the chords from the first and second progression, we have created a third progression. Let's hear how this sounds. It actually sounds pretty horrible with root position triads, but if we spend some time revoicing the triads, we can come up with something that sounds more interesting. We can even add a little syncopation to the rhythm to make it sound more interesting. Hey, thanks for watching the video. Be sure to like and leave a comment below if you have any questions. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button. If you like the music you've been listening to, please be sure to check out my friend John Opferkuch's album, The Kennedy Files, at this link.